your Microsoft 365 Adoption User Group. We're in February 2023. A little hard to believe we've come that far and all of the years. In fact, I have been doing this now for 7 years. I actually started on the 8th of February 2017. So in one more day, it'll have hit literally 7 years. Boy, what a journey this technology has taken in those 7 years from when I first started, and even the adoption journey and how it's grown with Microsoft and had such a focus on it, from that, what does it look like from an end user standpoint. So really loving the journey that we've all been on, and thank you for those that have been with me throughout this journey of so many years. I know that we've been going for some time. Every now and again I question and go, this is crazy, it's been doing it for so long. every month, although the pandemic we did skip a month here and there. And I don't usually run it in January because the first week of the month, no one's around anyway. So we always kick off in February. So we generally do sort of 10 to 11 in the year, depending. Sometimes there's a month where we just can't get a speaker. It happens. So I'd just like to start by acknowledging the traditional custodians of the land on which we're meeting from today, and actually pay my respects to elders past, present and emerging. And I extend that respect to any Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islanders peoples here today. Our code of conduct, I ask that we be welcoming and open to all questions and viewpoints, that we understand we all come from a different place, that we be friendly and patient and use the most appropriate images and texts when we're chatting, and GIFs and things like that as we go. So my name, if you're not familiar with me and you haven't been along, so I know we have had a spate of new users into the user group, especially over the last 3 months. So welcome. My name is Kirsty. You can find me online, there's way too many pages of it when you look me up. So what have I been up to? We always start the beginning of the month, a little bit about what have we been up to. So, geez, 2 months, a lot happens in 2 months. I went down for the Billy Joel concert in Melbourne, rocked up there and went to Art Vivo and made a ton of cookies for Christmas and burnt myself out and spent Christmas Day in hospital. The whole of Christmas Day. Just goes to show when you're just going a little hard. I picked up a bug when I was in Melbourne with traveling, and it took me, so I ended up very sick. So it wasn't my most ideal hospital, but I tell you what, my New Year's resolution was healthy, all things healthy, mind, body, spirit, people, work, work-life balance. Sometimes we don't stop and think about what that does. So, and that was sort of December. And then in January, I went down, I had a break, went to the Gold Coast, healed, got better, had a bit of fun. Elton John, making some little bits and pieces in cakes, and then went to the Post Malone and Red Hot Chili Peppers. Took my grandson to his very first concert. So that's my daughter and grandson, which you've seen photos of us all over the past. But yeah, had some highs and lows. I mean, as you do in anyone's world and life. Let's give you a bit of a insight into what we're doing. I have swapped around a little bit of this month. I am putting our speaker first and foremost, and then I'm going to start talking about what's new across adoption and 365 after Stephen has had a bit of a chat with us. So I would like to welcome in our guest speaker, Stephen. Stephen is actually from Prosci, and he's going to give us a little bit of a, inside world on the change management, some of that experience. He comes with a ton of experience. He worked at Microsoft for quite some time across the ACM space. I've worked with Stephen myself when he was in Microsoft. So I did a reach out to him now that he's in Prosci, because we are in the technical space. So how's trying to apply our change management into technology and the way that it works. Prosci is a great theory that can be applied in the realities of working on change management. So I am going to hand over to Stephen and let him talk to us a little bit about Prosci and some of his real world experience.
Thank you. And thank you for the warm welcome, and great to see everybody here today, and great turnout. So yes, my checkered history. So I'm currently...
I'm just going to say, Stephen, for anyone that's got questions at any point throughout Stephen's presentation, please just drop them into chat, and at the end we'll give you a chance to raise your hand, just so that I set the scene for you. Sorry, Stephen.
Perfect. Yeah, and really happy to have questions because that helps me to be able to be practical for you as well. So yes, I've been in the wonderful world of semi-retirement since September 2019, and that's when I started working with Prosci, and I'm a Prosci Master Instructor. And as Kirsty said, prior to that, I had 16 years with Microsoft, and I was in the support services space and working with customers using Microsoft technologies and getting the most business value out of them. And then in around about that 2013, 2014, as Microsoft started to bring cloud-based technologies into play, customers said to Microsoft, it's really good that you're bringing all this technology, but you've got to help us on the people side of change. And so around about that time, if you have been following Microsoft, they started the Adoption and Change Management Global Practice. And I was one of the founding members of that practice. And in fact, at one point, I was the only member, and I was covering from India, across Asia, Australia, New Zealand, China, and Japan. So spent a lot of time on a plane, in airport lounges, and going and seeing customers all around there. And the business has grown. But one of the things that happened back then is Microsoft, when they said, what are we going to do about helping manage the people side of change? We looked internally first. And you know what? Although Microsoft had a lot of great technology stuff, it really didn't have anything that addressed the people side of change. And so we had this free hand to go out and look at every methodology, everything that was out there. And we looked at them all and settled on partnering with Prosci. And the reason we did that, one, Prosci is research-based. It's got 22 years of longitudinal studies, and I'll go into that in a little bit further. Two, it looks at both organizational change and individual change. And there's a lot of methodologies that look at organizational change, a lot of methodologies that look at individual change, but not a lot that join the two together. And the third one is because we needed a practical solution that actually delivered benefits to our customers, we wanted something that had a tool set. And Prosci was one of the few that actually had a mature tool set that supported their methodology. And so we're going to talk a lot about that. And just a quick and the boring bits about the presentation. The presentation obviously is being recorded, so you can reference that. It doesn't give you a license to reuse and redistribute, but if you do want that, contact probably your best bet is the Prosci Australia and New Zealand offices, and they can talk about how you can get accredited and be able to use Prosci's material. And I'll talk about that at the end of the presentation as well. The other hint is a lot of what I'm presenting is actually publicly available. So if you do a little search, if there's something that interests you, if you do a little search, you'll find those bits very quickly. And why is change management important? I remember when we first started the adoption and change management in practice in Microsoft, and I was sitting in a meeting and we were talking, and it was an internal meeting in Microsoft, and we were talking about a particular customer. And that customer had come under financial pressure because, you know, what we were proposing was more than they could afford. And the solution architect said to me, oh, that's really simple. We'll drop out change management. And a lot of people, when they think about delivering a solution to a customer, they think that the technology side is the most important side. And what I'd like to do is take you through some of the reasons why, yes, you've got to have technology, but you've also got to focus on the people side of change. And part of the, I think the bias behind that is that people think that change management came out of HR and that it's this soft skills, this making people feel nice. But in fact, Prosci was started by an electrical engineer who worked at Bell Laboratories. And a lot of people are surprised when they hear that it was started by an electrical engineer. And it was started by a guy called Jeff Hyatt. And he actually first initiated his work and in wanting to start a research-based company. It was initially called Professional Sciences and then got joined together as Prosci. And he went out and he spoke to a number of companies, and he ended up interviewing 102 different people. And the first research was published in 1998. And part of that agreement was that he would go back and talk about the insights that he'd gained. And so he went back to the companies and he talked to the companies and said, and he talks about himself as 24 pages with a lot of white space in between. And he talked about the findings. He asked 3 simple questions: what worked, what didn't, and what would you do differently next time? And when he presented those back to those companies, they said, this is really impressive. Can you come and teach this? And so Prosci then went from a research into a training organisation around change management, still solidly backed on research. And I'll talk about the next lot of research that's coming up. And as we go through some of the real implications of why I think change management is coming into its own, is those last 2 points there in the research findings. 54% expect significant increase in change in their organisations, and 72% are nearing at or past saturation. If you think about your own organisation or the organisations you're working with, is that reflective of what they're experiencing? Yeah, can see a few nods. Yeah. And I think that's part of what is happening. The world is moving faster. But if you think about what Microsoft 365 is, it is a technology that you put in, but it continues to evolve over time. And Kirsty's going to go through the next wave of new function and capability. But that function and capability is made available fairly simply from a technology side. But what you need to do is focus on how you're going to get the business benefits out of the technology. And a lot of that has to do with that people side of change. And so when people think about Prosci, they've often heard of ADKAR, and they think Prosci equals ADKAR. So ADKAR is in fact a methodology that and a model that that Prosci have developed. It's about awareness, desire, knowledge, ability, and reinforcement. And it's about the personal journey that anybody goes through any change. But in fact, Prosci's methodology is made up of 3 phases, 9 stages, and 35 potential activities. So it's quite comprehensive in being able to give you a confident way of being able to apply change management to produce those business results. And that's really the focus of what change management's all about. It's about producing the business results. And so I'm going to talk about the secret sauce to change management. The secret sauce may sound like a strange comment, but one of my managers up in Singapore, when I was working up there, I used to talk about the secret sauce all the time, and his name is David Vander. He's just become the CEO of Live Tiles. So if ever you know him or work with him, you will hear about the secret sauce, I'm sure. And so these are the 5 things I'm going to cover. I'm going to talk about the power of storytelling and the know your why and about making it known. I want to talk about leaders casting a long shadow and about your job as a change manager in helping your leaders to be impactful, not busy. I want to talk about managing energy, not activity, and empowering, equipping, and your managers. And I've actually called that the secret sauce because that's the thing that's often missed. And remembering what the finish line is. And hint, it's not go live. So let's talk about the number 1, the power of storytelling. I was actually working with a government agency here in Queensland, and I was talking to senior middle managers in that organisation. And they made the comment that they always get told what to do, but they don't get told why to do it. And they actually said it would help them enormously if they understood the why. And that's reflective in Simon Sinek as well. where he comes out with start with the why. And that's an important thing that we need to consider. And it's about creating that storytelling, that compelling story as to why people should participate in a change. And you need to answer a number of questions. The why are we changing? What's the reason behind that? Because of the amount of change, you also now have to answer the why now. Why don't we put it off for 6 months? Why don't we put it off for 12 months when we're going to have more time? So you've got to answer the why now. Sometimes the compelling reason for change is letting people know the consequences of not changing, that might have significant impact. And it's important to tell people what's actually changing and what's not changing, and maybe thinking about the stop, the start, and the continue elements of that. And so when you're thinking about this, Prosci talks about the 4 Ps as a model, and some of you may well be familiar with this. The project is the project name, and so you think about that. The purpose is what are you trying to achieve? The particulars is what's actually changing, and the people is who will actually change. And what you're wanting to do when you're telling the story, you're wanting to make sure you've got a very clear purpose, the why, those elements that we talked about before. But the other thing that you're wanting to do is you're wanting to establish what is the dependency on these people changing the way they work. Because if you have a medium or a high dependency on these people changing the way they work, you won't have the technical architect or the solution architect, as they said to me, well, let's drop change management. If people understand that to achieve these outcomes, we have a medium or a high dependency on these people changing the way they work, then that's the valid reason for focusing on change management, not just the project management, not just the technical implementation. And when you're thinking through this and you're thinking through what success looks like, that's part of this why story. And you're wanting to make sure that you're talking about what are the project objectives. Those are very important. But you need to go beyond that. You need to understand what are the organizational gains that the organization wants to achieve. And so you're needing to think through and have that clarity. And often, where projects fail to achieve the business outcomes, it's because they haven't clearly defined what those business outcomes are. They've focused too much just on the technical and haven't thought about the business outcomes. So when you're doing your storytelling, you need to be able to incorporate all of those elements into your storytelling. The number 2 reason and secret is about leaders casting a long shadow. And this statement comes from Tracy Fellows, who was a corporate vice president in Microsoft and also the head of Microsoft Australia for a while. And she used to talk about this for a long time. And it's saying not only is it the physical presence, but the influence that the leader has within an organization. And this is now supported by Prosci's research. In all 11 of Prosci's studies, active and visible sponsorship was the number 1 contributor to business success, to business outcomes. In fact, those who had extremely effective sponsors, 73% of those reported that they met or exceeded project objectives. And people often say, what does that look like? What does active and visible sponsorship look like? And one of the ways that you're able to tell very quickly is that person who's the sponsor, who's leading the change, is that person approachable? I was working with a mining company up in Jakarta, and the CEO, who was the sponsor of the program we were working on, his office was about 20 meters away from the lift. And in that 20 meters, it was a big open area workspace. And if you think, okay, how long would it take for somebody to walk 20 meters from the lift to their office? You think, all right, a few minutes, brisk walk. It took him about 45 minutes. to get out of the lift and to get to his office. And that's because he stopped and talked. When you talk about active and visible and being approachable and having that influence and that leader casting a long shadow, it's about the behaviors of being engaged and involved with the people. It's not the big announcement at the front announcing the project started, but actually talking and embedding and adding that meaning and authority to the change with people through that discussion, through that talking. He answered their questions one-on-one or ones with teams. He would spend time. If they had questions, they would be able to ask him personally. And he actually scheduled that he allowed an hour for him to get from the lift to his office when he walked in, because he wanted to be available. And you think about your own sponsor and you think about what does it mean to be active and visible? That's what we're talking about. It's about being available, approachable, interacting, answering people's questions. All of those things are the things that make the change real for them. And in fact, the research supports this. So Prosci's research says that people want to hear about those organizational messages. Why this change? Why now? And what are the consequences of not changing? From the CEO, president, or the executive manager. 75% of people want to hear those messages from them. And the what's in it for me message, how's this going to impact me? 70% want to hear that message from their direct manager or supervisor. Now, if you're a communication specialist, unfortunately, people don't really want to hear from you. If you're in HR, they don't want to hear from you. If you're a project team member, nobody wants to hear from you. If you're the project team leader, a little, but not much. Change team member, not very much. Change management team leader, a little, but not very much. So here's a point where you can say, am I aligning my communication, my change communication, to the research? And the question is, where does your communication come from? If it comes from you as a change manager, as a change lead or the project team lead, you're not being effective. People are not necessarily going to be listening to you. In fact, you're much better preparing it so that it goes out from the CEO, the president, the executive manager about the business reason for change, or from the sponsor, and from the supervisor and immediate manager about the why this change and what's the personal impact on me. In fact, Prosci talks about that as change managers, we are like the directors of the play, and the people who are up on the stage, the actors, are the sponsor, doing the A, B's and C's, being active and visible, building that coalition with the sponsors and communicating directly with employees, and for the people managers, playing that role of clerk, of communicator, liaison, advocate, resistance manager and coach. And when the audience comes in, they see the actors up on the stage, but there's been a lot of work done behind to prepare those actors to say their lines, to interact. And those roles are the preparation roles. The enabling roles are the change practitioner and the project manager. And the change practitioner is preparing the lines, helping them understand what's the motivation, what's the intent, how's it going to be communicated. All of those elements are there. For the people managers, the why is this happening and why now, and how's it going to impact me personally? Again, that's the story that they need to be telling. But the change practitioner and the project manager are supporting them, are producing the materials to help them be successful in that storytelling. But the storytelling is done by the sponsor and the people managers. Those enabling roles are the change practitioner and project manager. And so as you're thinking through this, you're thinking through, okay, we want to make sure that we are managing energy, not activity. And we've talked about ADKAR a little before. And what we're looking at is people have to move through awareness, desire, knowledge, ability, and reinforcement. And it's not until the critical mass of people reach ability that change success is achieved. And so as we're moving through this, if we're thinking at an organizational level, we're thinking about the organization moving from current through transition to future state. But what often happens is that people drop out along the way. And we end up in what's called the Swiss cheese future state, where we don't get everybody across the line and we don't achieve the business outcomes that we're after. And what you'll notice, the difference between the transition state at the top with change management and the transition state at the bottom is not only at the bottom without change management is it rough and ready, but it's also longer. And this is where people lose energy. In the transition state is where people lose energy. In fact, we had one person from the South Island of New Zealand talk about the transition state. And if you know New Zealand, they have big hedgerows, and she talked about them as walking backwards naked through the hedge. And that's what transition is like. It's uncomfortable. It's going to scratch you and do all of those things. But as a change manager, you want to make that transition phase as short as possible and provide the comfort to help people successfully navigate through there so that you get people through and you maximize success for the organization. Next, I've talked about the secret sauce. The way that you engage, empower, and equip managers will be crucial to whether or not you achieve the business outcome. The reason behind that, if you look at the mapping of the plans that you're going to create, the sponsor plan, the people manager plan, the communications plan, and the training plan, and you align those to ADKAR, which is the journey that people go through of awareness, desire, knowledge, ability, and reinforcement. Out of those plans, the only plan that impacts all elements of ADKAR is the manager. And yet, the latest research says that 63% of organizations report that they failed to adequately prepare their people managers to be leaders of change. And in fact, whenever we were called in to do a rescue mission as Microsoft, where they'd been doing a change and they called us in to help them because they weren't getting the business results, the number one common reason why that business result wasn't being achieved and why their change program wasn't being successful is because they hadn't adequately prepared and supported and equipped their people managers. And so again, if you're wanting to be successful, make sure that you're doing that. And people managers are so crucial. And it doesn't take you long to think about why. So I want you to do an exercise. I want you to think about the person you would consider as the best people manager you have ever had. So think about that person. Now I want you to think about what made that person so impactful for you. What made you think of them as the best people manager? Okay, so those are the things that you're going to leverage. You trust them. When I think about the best people manager that I ever had, I trusted him. I actually knew that he was looking out for my best interests, and also that when he was landing some tough messages with me, telling me things I needed to change that maybe I didn't want to hear about, I could take that because I trusted that he was looking out for my best interest. And so when you think about people managers, why they are so impactful is because people trust them. And you need to be able to leverage that. And the research also says that they are the preferred senders of the what's in it for me messages because they are able to customize that message specific for that individual. And so you need them to be doing that role of Clark, communicator, liaison, advocate, resistance manager, and coach. You need them to be your eyes and ears if you're in an organization of any size whatsoever. You cannot be everywhere at once, but your people managers can be. And as long as you've got that liaison role established and that two-way communication between yourself and them, they are your eyes and ears on the ground, and they will help you. And number 5, remember the finish line. And the finish line is not go live, but when the business benefits are realized. And so the last secret to change success is to make sure that you've thought about the sustainment phase. What are you going to do from go live to when the business value is fully realized for the organization? What are those things going to be? And this is about getting everybody over the line, getting everybody so that they can confidently work in that new way. I talk about it as being when that future state becomes the new current state, because everybody refers to this is the way we have always worked. And so spending time here is important, but it's often an area that's forgotten. And in fact, I've had many times where project managers have said, we're going to shut down the project management team 1 month after go live. And as a change manager, you may have 3 months of work to do to be able to make sure that the change is sustained, is embedded, and that the business value is realized. And remember, we talked about, you've got to think about the purpose in terms of both the project objectives. The project objectives are often met at go live, but the business value, the business realization is not realized until everybody works in that new way and that the outcomes for the organization are achieved and are sustained and have become business as usual. And so thinking through all of those areas is sort of the things that I would be looking at and wanting to focus on. So Kirsty, what are the questions that have popped up?
Just they love the slides and so far, and a couple of regards to the actually being able to get them. But as you stated, they're available. Most of it is public, and that you can also go through Prosci as well.
Yeah, and I'll give you the contact links for Prosci in a sec.
Yes, and James has just put through, so lovely methodology. Are there recommendations on how to apply it in a product management, like constantly managed updates versus project one-off approach?
Yeah. So Prosci's methodology is applicable both in a waterfall-based approach or an iterative or an agile approach. When I was working up in Jakarta, it was actually an agile project that I was working on. And there, what you're wanting to do is set up partnership between the product owner, the Scrum Master, and yourself as a change manager, and working cooperation then with them. And then if you're thinking through ADKAR, at the project level, you've got awareness and desire at the beginning about what the project's about and about Agile, how Agile's, and reinforcement that sustaining the outcome at the end is after all the sprint releases are completed. But then within each sprint release cycle, you do a mini ADKAR aligned to each sprint release cycle. There's a one-day program on integrating change management with Agile that Prosci does, if you're particularly wanting to go into more depth there.
We've also got, how is this adapted to different scales?
Yeah, I have worked on organizations that are 2,000, but I've also worked in India on an organization that was 110,000 people. And absolutely the methodology scales and is applicable there. Again, we won't have the time, but the next slide will talk you where to go to. If you're really into wanting to do that level of investigation into methodology, highly recommend doing the certification program if you're wanting to really understand the program, the methodology, as well as the tools, and then how to scale. But absolutely, yes, it does.
We do have one more question, but I might wait till you've hit to the end of the presentation and we'll answer your question, Brendan.
Okay. So a few people have already asked about things, and we've only had 30 minutes. The certification program is 3 days. So it takes you into a lot of depth. It gives you that real understanding of the 3 phases, the 9 stages. You use all 35 of the tools that are available based on the research. And just so that you know, if you register, there will be a price increase from the 1st of March, but if you register in February, you'll be able to register at the 2022 pricing. So that's available. And you can see the link there, and if you do a search for Prosci Australia, you'll be able to see all the classes that are available that are advertised now. And then the other thing is that there is research going through its next round. So if you're interested and want to participate in that, it's actually a good way of being able to get access to the research. So if you are a participant and you respond to the survey, you actually get access to the research once it's published. So it's about to be announced. It was started last week and it'll be more formally announced in the coming week. So if you're wanting to participate, you can do that and respond and contribute to the research, but also it's a good way of being able to get access to that research once it's published.
Okay. We do have one or two more questions if you're up for it.
Go for
Stephen. So we've got, how do you approach situation where senior leaders are stuck in the status quo?
Yeah. One of the things that I talked about is linking the business outcomes to the people. And so really getting them to think through that about what dependency do you have on people changing the way they work to achieve the business outcomes, not the project objectives, but the business outcomes. And so if you can establish that, and if it's medium or high, that's a good reason to have change management in place. The other thing is that I get them to have an honest discussion around the last 3 to 5 projects that they ran. And I'm a sample size of 1, but it's a question that I asked all of my customers. And I was normally working directly with about 5 to 6 customers per year. And not one of my customers ever said that the last 3 to 5 projects all achieved the business outcomes. And once you drill down on that, then the reasons are often that they didn't focus on the people side of change.
Thanks for that. As a re-engaging Prosci practitioner, having come back to CM after a few years of not doing it, how do you recommend refamiliarizing yourself? It's like the portal and things like that. And has there been any updates sort of in 2021? And I know that can be a real challenge for a lot of people. Is just staying up to date can always be a what's happening and what's going on.
Yeah. So Prosci actually did a major upgrade in 2021. And they did a major refresh to the whole of the program. So if you did it before 2021, the program's been completely revamped. The other thing that they did at that point in time is that they brought a tool called Proxima. So if you were using the program or went to the program before then, you will not have been exposed to that. And so Proxima is a new online tool that has all of those 35 potential activities built into it, and it allows you to, in that online tool set, to be able to develop a change management program. The Knowledge Hub has also been significantly increased in its usability. And in fact, I still run these classes, the certification classes into Microsoft. And I was running one in November last year, and LinkedIn, one of the lead learning developers out of LinkedIn attended the class, and her comment was that Prosci's Knowledge Hub is one of the best knowledge hubs she's ever seen. So that's great hearing from somebody who's a knowledge professional to be able to recognize and acknowledge that. So yeah, what you can do, if you can, I'd strongly recommend redoing the certification class. It's a 3-day program. There is a 1-day program to be able to upgrade, but I think there's a lot of value in doing the 3-day certification program. Again, if you're interested, go onto the Prosci portal and it will give you what's available and the dates.
Thank you. Does anyone have any other questions? You can please feel free to raise your hand or type them into chat.
Or come off mute.
That's it. Raise your hand, just come off mute. Saying, it's certainly the theory is fabulous. The putting it into practice is always the hard component, because you're dealing with people, and people are always, it's never particularly easy. Now I'm just looking at the link that you've got there. I think I put it in wrong, so thanks for that, Brandon. Let me just put in the right link. I just copied it in, and can I just get you to go back to
Which
the page
one?
that you're on? That one there. Yeah, I just realized I've put 3. Hey, let me just get it in correctly. I'm just copying this in HU. I put a HE rather than a HU. So sorry, everyone. Okay, BE. Just double check it again.
Yeah, make sure I
There we
copied
go.
and paste it right too.
Yeah, so I've just put that back in again. So my apologies, it wasn't quite the correct link. Thank you very much for that, Stephen. Feel free to stay if you like to see what's going on across Microsoft and what's happening there. So I will just take back over the screen and pass on. So thank you very much. I do love the ADCAR methodology, and I was very lucky to do the Microsoft course where we could align it purely to some of the tech there, if anyone's done that. Thank you. Okay, so let's get stuck into then some of the what's new, because we've had sort of 2 months where we've been away, but I mean, the good part is Microsoft sometimes slows down a little because it is Christmas. So let's get stuck into where you go. Anton, the Microsoft course is actually run, it's usually invited as a partner to do the course. So I don't know if they do it particularly regularly. I think it was sort of once in the year. It's, but it does come up every now and again.
Yeah.
No.
And my understanding is that they're not running any more of those that I know of.
Okay.
And they're redirecting you just directly to Prosci.
And doing it that way instead. Okay, there you go. Thank you. Appreciate that update, Stephen. So, okay, so the Microsoft 365 YouTube channel, my YouTube channel, this is where all the videos are actually going to go. I've pinned the link to all of the content in our chat. So if you go to the chat, you will actually find it there. I will load the recording for this session, and it's got the link to the presentation and everything there on the YouTube channel for you, Microsoft 365 Adoption. And we now have, I've answered 67 questions on Collab Talk on 365, working alongside Christian and a ton of other MVPs, where we go and answer questions for you. Please feel free at any time if you're having any challenges. Then as a team of technical people, we come together to answer them for you. So you can always reach out. The latest Change Champion calls that are run from by Caruana and the team. The latest one in January, if you wanted to have a look, it's actually on the premium overview. So the presentation is available. You've got it through chat to go and see if you want any of the links. There's always the newsletter. Go and have a look at the latest newsletter. They will put all the information, things that are actually going on, some of the updates that are actually happening across this space. So this is the January newsletter. It has come out only a little over a week or so. So always good to keep up to date. If you don't actually subscribe to it, I highly recommend the LinkedIn newsletter. So that'll also go up on the Microsoft blog. So anything that is new across adoption, you will see coming through the blog. Microsoft have set up their community days. So they've got a community sort of days tenet. These are all of the summits that are going on around the globe. So it's not the user groups, it's actually the often the paid and free summits that you will find right around the world that you could potentially join in. One of the ones that is coming up is the Community Days Women in Tech. For anyone that is a lady along today that would like to go, that is coming up fairly soon. It is in UK time, so up to you in terms of we often can do kind of the evening on UK time. The community events, they were also putting sort of lots of different stuff. A lot of the times it is technical, but there are some good AMA type sessions that will be running on the AMAs and the previous recordings if you want to go and have a look. For example, like Viva Goals was a recent one that you might want to go and have a look at the previous recording around Viva Goals if you want to get up to speed. The Microsoft adoption guides, there are some new guides that have actually gone up. They've been adjusting these quite a bit. So there's some changes that have happened there. The ones that I do particularly love, the new guides that have come out, are the Loot ones. You got your manufacturing, marketing, and retail guide, and they look a little like this. So what does the day in the life look like? They are PDFs that you can download. They are not editable, but it gives you a good scenario to be able to put out there internally to help you in terms of adoption. A couple of blogs that have gone out that I think are of value, that I often, for change champions and programs that I'm in, I will put in as a tab temporarily, or I will link in so that they can have a read. Some of them, I have a OneNote book where we put things that are new that might actually help in. And one of them is that whole co-organizer role, and what does that look like now, and what are the things you can and can't do, and step-by-steps on doing it. So I do like some of these step-by-step blogs that are actually going out in the Teams community blog. This one is, so that they've got some really great new guides that have come through the admin center to be able to help IT managing that effort of getting up and running. And as part of that process, it does build in some of the adoption components and a few other things. I went through a few of them. What I particularly liked, the latest ones that have come in, is the Viva guides to help anyone get up and running. So if you have your own small business, for example, or whatever that looks like, some support there. So step-by-steps. As part of those guides, they've got in there things like the link to the Viva Learning. It's a guided simulation. So some of them have these simulations that you could grab the links to, and you could drop them into your team, because they're all in the back end, ultimately sort of based on Azure, and they're free for anyone to go through. How do you work on Viva Learning? It's got step-by-step guided simulations. So I've been dropping these in for sort of change champions to go through. Modern Workplace Superhero. So there's always some fabulous information that comes out. The January news has actually hit. It is focusing on the community hub and helping you understand a little bit more. They have their YouTube channel, and there's some great information that actually is on that YouTube channel to be able to support for the community superheroes. So you can see here, it's like, focus time, approvals, word clouds, understanding, presenter mode. So there's some good stuff. If you don't follow the Modern Work Superheroes, I do recommend that you have a look at that. Okay. James is actually saying, do you feel like the pace of change far exceeds Prosci or any methodology to keep up? Look, change is change, I think. So it doesn't really matter what it is. The methodology's been around for a really long time. It's up to us to apply it again to the change, I suppose, is probably one of the better ways to put it. But there's certainly plenty happening across this space. There's always lots happening. Yeah, Stephen?
Yeah, and yes, certainly we've often been called in when we're with Microsoft, where we're called in late and we were told you've got 2 weeks to get this done. The methodology guides you through that as well. So don't feel that it's not appropriate even there. And there's a lot of benefit in applying that, even if it's not necessarily perfect.
Yeah. And as Jane said, it's the, Microsoft and the change that they're going through constantly. Yeah, it is a real challenge. It's why I run the user group, to help you even understand, well, what has changed, so that we can keep up to date with it, because it really is a challenge. And it's one of the good things about me running the user group, and one of the reasons I keep coming back every month, is because it forces me to look at the change. Yeah, and so that's what I do love about it. It actually helps me to keep up to date. And every time I go, I think I'm done, especially after so many years, I think I'm done, but I go, but then how do I keep myself up to date? It's very easy to fall behind. So I do love it from that perspective. Yeah.
Can I make one more?
Yeah, go for it.
One more very quick comment.
Yeah.
What's really important is, if you're going to help your customers and also help yourself, it's about making change part of the rhythm of the business.
Yeah.
So that's not an add-on, but it's actually the way that the business is run. And when Microsoft first released 365, if you remember back then, they talked about Evergreen and the skills and the management associated with that. I was actually a program manager for that. So it's actually building that in as a capability. And for yourselves, this is what I had to do. I basically scheduled at least 2 to 3 hours per week were I just spent on keeping up to date with the changes.
Yeah, and it is a real challenge, and I know that, you know, it's with the change champions that across organizations that I'll run this information through with them to try and help to disseminate it, because the rate of change is particularly fast. And you know, I see a lot of projects where at the end of the project it doesn't become BAU, the change with 365. It's just let's just roll it out and move on, roll it out and move on, and then they fall behind and the skills fall behind and they're not using this and they're not it happens all the time. That's why we keep employed for those that are in the, you know, the partner training change space. We wouldn't have a job otherwise. So the beauty of it. Thanks for those questions. They're important ones for us to consider when it comes to, you know, and this is a session that's focused on change management. So I do appreciate those questions. The Viva Engage Yammer Festival was conducted last year in December with Microsoft and Swoop. There's some really great videos and recap around that. I would highly recommend going and have a looking at some of the recap. There's some new custom backgrounds in the gallery. It's now including the Viva Engage background. So we got some Yammer flowing in. So if you're a bit of a Yammer fan, you'll find some of those backgrounds. There's been a couple of blogs. Now this one came out and it was a good year ago, but I've come back around it because I'm getting a lot of questions around task management. Now we've got Loop coming in, and so I've just thought I'd put this one back in again. It's a good end user getting started tips for task management, one you might want to drop into your change champion, or if you've got a, you know, Microsoft 101 or a modern workplace type team or Yammer community, for example, these are some good links you might want to drop in to help people to really understand what does it look like. Task management for planner, some beginners, so another one that you could potentially drop in. Then there's create a Microsoft list and where can you do it across Microsoft 365, because there's so many ways that you could start to kind of click in and get those lists started. It's helping people to know where you can get started. And so there's some really good step-by-steps across these various blogs. I thought I'd bring those ones back in to help you out. So now what's new on the 365? That's kind of on the adoption and kind of revisiting a couple of things in adoption that might help you. Are we ready for the, it's usually here we go, hard and fast. Everyone take a breath, strap in. This is where we start to go a little quicker. Okay. Microsoft Teams now has its emergency operations that's actually come through. It is a repository on GitHub. It is open source to be able to help you if you need to be able to do emergency type pushing out announcements across Teams or things like that. A really good one that I would recommend you might want to start to have a look at if you do deal with any emergency operations. You can plug it into the platform. And actually, we spoke about that. One of the videos that will be going live on the collab talk was a question exactly around this. So it was quite fortuitous that it just come out, and I could talk about it on the collab talk, because someone was saying, how do I push out emergency announcements right across the business? So what's new to Teams? Now, we've talked about this previously, so I've actually dropped it in here in our past presentation and the recording. It is now out there in general availability as part of Teams Premium. So I thought I'd just bring in some of the core components, because things do sometimes change just a little bit, and our standard functionality has actually also been enhanced. So you can start to see some of the core functionality that's coming through as part of the standard, and then you got your premium, which we did talk about on the previous session, that was on top of. Okay, so these are some of the things that you can start to have a look at. I'm not going to go into it all over again. You can always revisit it or look at the blog if you wish to. Now, as quick as I put this in, I was extremely excited because I have right here, it's connected. I have the Elgato, throwing things around. I have the Elgato Stream Deck sitting here. And for me, throw things around, I'm not so tech savvy, so it's a little bit of a brick in my home with one or two buttons being used. But Teams was coming out with a plugin for your Elgato Stream Deck. It was out there for a short period of time. It did have a bug. They put it on hold. It will come back out again. So if you do have Stream Decks and you do a lot of virtual Teams type stuff and you're a trainer or you're a presenter, they are great. And I'm not tech savvy enough, but I'm really looking forward to that one coming back out again when it comes off hold. So we'll see it again soon. You can bring it down. Okay. Teams rooms. There's been quite a few things that have come through over the last couple of months around Teams rooms. I think one of the bigger ones is there's been a lot that's actually happening with Android, so for Android devices, and being able to walk up and it will have sort of, as part of the sharing, just to jump straight in without having to have a meeting, sort of jumping straight in. You might even see it's got the button here for whiteboarding on Android. You can just walk up, press the whiteboard, and you can start collaborating and then join a meeting even after you've joined the whiteboard. So it's that managing that sort of whiteboard in a Teams meeting. There's some great new features that are coming in there and some updates to the interface. So if you have got training content, for example, you've created around your Teams rooms, you will need to do some updates because it is having an interface change too. In terms of calling, you will have now an actionable missed call notification. So in your activity feed, so if you go to your activity feed where you've got a missed call, you're actually going to be able to click on the call button directly from that activity feed. I do like the fact that our activity feed is getting a little bit more interactive. So that's should, cross fingers, be out fairly soon. It is in public preview. What's new in Teams, the recommending people. So as you start to type in, it was announced, I have talked about this previously, you start to type, it will recognize and give you a previous list. Also spoke about this previously. Deleting chat was announced at Ignite. It's now out. It doesn't impact the other participants. The other one that I had announced was adding people to group chat with the @mention. So this is our group chat. You can just @mention, it will automatically add them in. I thought they were 3 that I'll just repeat from back in November last year. Most of them I haven't, but they were just 3 I thought would be important for you. Okay. Scheduling send suggestions in Teams chat. So we've actually seen it coming through in a couple of different areas. So now we've got that one-on-one message, and that it's going to be for the chat for after hours. So you can do a schedule and you can actually postpone it. So it will give you a bit of a message to go, do you want to be sending this through? Now it is available and on by default, but an individual can turn this on and off themselves in the settings. So you can go up to the ellipsis into the settings and you can actually change it yourself if you don't want to have that suggestions that you're trying to send it outside of meeting hours. Okay. The support for a co-organizer to manage the breakout rooms. You have a few core components. Some of that's already rolled out, but coming in is that be able to, create the rooms, configure it, assigning. So some of it we've had, some of it we haven't, and even renaming and deleting the rooms. They will not be able to pre-create, by the way. They can't pre-create and pre-assign. It's when the meeting kicks off in terms of that co-organizer role that you'll be able to start making those adjustments. It's not there in the pre. Although it's talking about, coming, but we'll see. Fixing the timestamp format in Teams meeting transcripts. So you'll be able to go in and make those adjustments if you've got it going through incorrectly. So that is a fix that's actually coming out. There's some presenter window improvements when it comes to screen sharing. It will put like the kind of the bluey bar running around the individual when they are live. And if they raise their hand, then it will actually give you the yellow around their name with the hand. So you can get a little bit more aware of what's going on when it comes to the raising of hands and awareness and chatting or talking. There's been some live event attendee improvements that are going in there. So increased reliability, pop out into separate window, for example, to be able to support. Now what's coming? Some flyout enhancements. So we're going to have these app flyouts. So when you actually click on the plus button, you're going to see the app, and it's going to make that just that little bit easier with these flyouts. You're going to see that throughout Teams, not just in a meeting. So that will flow through fairly shortly with those flyout enhancements. So the menus then are going to give you a bit of a better team experience to launch the apps. The expanded view for the profile card is now in Teams. So that full card that you would have seen over in Outlook, for example, you're going to see that now, where it's going to give you that overview of the profile and contact information and chart and LinkedIn if it's enabled in the business. So that profile card piece is going to be flowing through coming soon to Teams, and it's rolling out over the next couple of months. The automatic lowering of a user's hands. I am loving this one. So it's actually a bit of a AI piece that says, hang on, we've noticed that you've spoken, and it gives a prompt to go, do you want to keep your hands raised or do you want to lower? This one I do particularly like, especially as a trainer and people are raising hands and I go, hang on a second, your hand's still up. Do you have another question? Or did I miss whether they'd taken it down and put it back up again? It's very easy to sort of, and then they'll go, I can't, where do I lower it? So we're starting to see that coming through, and I'm really looking forward to that one in particular. Sharing a copy of your praise. So as part of those Visa Insights sort of app, you've got the praise. There is a bit of an extension to that now where you can go share a copy with someone else, and that will then come up and say that it's also shared. So you can kind of go, I'm going to share this with the senior leader as well to show them that I'm praising my particular employee. So fabulous job, and I'm just CC them in so that they can acknowledge them too. So in the past, I would always just do an @ mention underneath it to try and get their attention. But I do like the fact that this is flowing through to be able to help morale. In terms of what's coming to Yammer, there is some iOS and Android updates around the navigation. So they are adding in the view all components. So you can see as part of that sort of navigation bar down the bottom, it opens to a larger menu with some of those shortcuts. The profile icon is in the top left, will now be a shortcut to the user's profile. So you'll have that flowing through. And then it'll also give you some instructions for accessing the existing shortcuts, may need to be. Don't forget to update any content that you've created with some of these changes. Okay. There is some new layout options in OneNote on Windows, not Windows 10, Windows on Windows 10. It's the OneNote on Windows. So that's actually coming soon to be able to have those new layouts flowing through over to the left-hand side. What's new in SharePoint? So you have the Microsoft 365 feed. It's a mix of that relevant information that's coming right across 365. It's actually personal to the user, so it'll go based on what's relevant for them. You can have a look at that, and in terms of the Outlook mobile search as well, some of those other features and what it actually looks like for that feed to be flowing through. So you'll see the Microsoft feed, and then you've also got some of the search components there too. In terms of Microsoft lists, it's giving you the calendar week layout. So this is a month layout, or you could do a new week layout. So it's month or a new week layout, and you can apply conditional formatting and color code items on that calendar as well as part of your list. For SharePoint, we had it in OneDrive where you could do put it out there to external parties to be able to do a request files to upload into OneDrive. We have that now, and it is flowing through to request files for external parties so that they can come and drop it in. They can't see other content, they can't edit, delete, download files, or even see who else has uploaded files. Okay, so it's a request files and it's just their files and dropping it into that folder. So this is that external file request in a SharePoint document library. The sharing experience, we've now got that sensitivity label inside that sharing dialog box. So this will be pushed out. It comes from more of sort of that central organizational, what is the sensitivity labels? It will recognize based on words and start to apply sensitivity labels and have that popping in there. And you can then also, as part of that, adjusting to make sure that the right sensitivity label is applied to a particular file that has been shared around. The OneDrive home experience, it's funny, it was a while ago that I was on a call with Microsoft, and we were going through, what would make a good landing page for the OneDrive. And there has been some shifts and changes, and we were looking at a lot of the different ways, what it looks like, and do we have big file, squares running across the top, or does it look like this, or does it look like that? So it's good to see it kind of flowing through. We've seen this sort of same home functionality on our main page that we come into 365. So that's now flowing into OneDrive as part of that home page. What are all the things that you've done recently? And you've got running across the top if you want to filter it down. The older look and feel that we're used to is still there under My Files over on the left-hand side. So they can still click on that and actually see that standard. But it is a refresh landing page experience that you're going to be able to see around your relevant file activity. Okay. So a lot of us will have content that might be created around OneDrive. You'll need to update it. Updating the files on demand. So if you are going into the little cloud that's, your sync client for OneDrive, your little blue cloud, when you go in there, it has had an update when it comes to its look and feel around the settings. So you might need to update training content. And so this on demand settings, now we've actually got a toggle there to be able to allow users to opt out the files on demand. So it's no longer kind of as sort of hidden as such. It's fairly large buttons. So you're going to see the two new buttons of downloading files as you open them, and then download all files now. In terms of Stream, it's important to remember that Stream Classic is going to be retired. So we've got 1 year in terms of retirement. So you'll need to have a look at the migration and bringing your information over. You can start to do things like there'll be settings to be able to delay and block that sort of uploads to try and stop people from still putting things in there. So I've put some guides and information if you haven't actually gone on that journey yet. Please remember it is going into retirement, and you will be moving over to the new SharePoint in SharePoint and OneDrive. So Stream in SharePoint and OneDrive, not the Classic. Okay. In terms of Stream, the a new feature, you may have seen it if you go in and you do lists. It's already there. It says the what's coming, but for everyone, not everyone might have it. I know that I am seeing it. So when you go create and view, so if I go into lists, for example, it's coming to lists to be able to create a playlist for videos. So you can create a list and then have your videos in there. And you can either do this directly through Stream or via lists to create those sort of different flows. And then you can create your own playlists, and those playlists can be available for the organization. Okay, so they can be accessed from the Stream or from the lists homepage. Stream, the video analytics, that's something that we did love about the Classic, and it's kept a lot of people over in the Classic environment because you didn't have those analytics to kind of go, are people watching it? How long have they watched it for? It was one of the core components that I particularly liked about the Stream Classic. Now that plugin for the web is flowing through, and it will give you those viewer and viewer counts. So that's going to be coming through for the 7, 30, 90 days and all. So you'll be able to see and interact with that viewership retention chart on top of that video playback experience. So that is actually flowing through now. The Whiteboard. So there's a few things that have been flowing through. We've seen a lot of updates over the last year around Whiteboard. There is some more on being able to access your whiteboards anytime from anywhere. Now on your mobile phone, so you've now got the app for your mobile phone with the easy creating content. So you've got the little plus button here to do a create pane, inserting images. It's optimized so that you can flick it and go over into landscape. So it's optimized to do that. You can react and give feedback as well as part of that, inserting documents directly from your mobile phone, so from OneDrive for Business, and then sort of things like grid notes and all from your mobile phone. So we're seeing that flying through a lot, especially when we're seeing Whiteboard coming in on Android Teams rooms, and so we're starting to get some consistency and flowing across all the different devices. So I do like that. In terms of what's new to forms, there's been a lot happening across polls and form. So when we're getting into sort of this environment, there's now the multi-question, so you can ask sort of more than one question now, so you can sort of click your way through and have multi-questions that you can actually pre-create prior to the meeting. You can then do the launch and do it on the go and have that response. So you can have sort of some different ways to be able to collect your feedback, with forms being the back end of polls. There is a new cover page template that you can put with some predefined cover pages automatically based on the topic. So put your topic in first, and now you've got a new experience where you get this sort of cover page to be able to help you around and distributing your forms. So I do like some of these sort of cover pages that are coming up the top here, a little bit bigger with some more information. The polls apps in team. This is a blog that went out, and it's showing you some step-by-steps of the polls app in Teams meetings. Some questions. It's all based on Q&As. Can I do this? Where does it go? How do I get? And some really great information sort of underneath of, where are they sitting and what does it sort of look like, down to questions and answers with screenshots. So a bit of a step-by-step. Another one that would be great to drop in for your champs or any education you might be doing across a business. So I do like that one. Another piece in terms of what's new to forms is being able to distribute your form to multiple channels with an adaptive view. So you've got a distribute form in Outlook. So this is a new sort of way that it's including sort of those cover pages, sending that form and quiz out to external users. So it says, do you also want to include, and you can sort of see how you can get little pictures with the new QR code embedding in as part of it experience. And then you can do that for both internal and external email addresses, so it doesn't look different from one to the other. In terms of Excel, there's some features and functionality that's coming through Excel, as well as plopping into forms. So I've put this under the forms rather than under the Excel banner, because what I do like, there's a new forms experience where the information is now syncing automatically into Excel. So it's available. So it's just kind of sitting there and it's in your OneDrive. So you'll have the Excel form there, but it's also including, and what I love is it's giving you those inserting chart recommendations off the back of your information. That one I would often struggle with inside Excel, because it would kind of go, they want to have the information in their own corporate colors kind of stuff. So that's sort of dropping it in to be able to interpret the responses a little better directly in Excel. So do like that flow through. What's new to Planner? It is out. It's been rolling there, introducing recurring tasks and the grid features in Planner. So those setting up repeating tasks for daily, weekly, and monthly. Do love that. I use that fairly regularly. I know it's one that's a lot of people have been waiting on. It is here. So this then enables you also, as part of the recurring grid features, to have those planner tasks, and it plugs into those Viva goals. So you've now got your planner plugging into your Viva goals, plugging into Planner, so that as a manager in a team, you can actually be across what those objectives and results are to be able to plan out your work. So that's taking those OKRs and dropping them into Planner with the new connection. The grid view looks a little like this, so that you can actually see it now on the online environment. So you've got your grid view is now there. That's what it looks like. In Planner task notes, it is now going to support, is coming out very soon, your rich text and images in your task notes inside Planner, so that they can be seen, including the support for images. It is coming soon, not quite yet, but the rich text is at least there, so you can do simple things like bold, italics, and underline. In To Do, if you use To Do, your My Day, generally on your My Day, it was, you'd go and choose things to put on the My Day. What it's now got is the ability to be able to auto-populate tasks based on your due date. So you can go, right, task complete based on their due date. It will automatically drop in saying this is for today. It's a little bit of kind of that AI drop in. I do like that. It's like, this is due. Do you want to do this today in your To Do? In terms of learning path creation, Microsoft Viva Learning, you're going to be able to now create these ordered learning objects that are aligned to a particular goal. So these learning paths that are coming into play allow you to be able to set up, what is the learning path? It's kind of a group of learning path creation that you can build based on all the different content that runs across Viva. So that is things like, things you got on SharePoint or in your various libraries, or do you have particular plugin apps where the learning partners, for example, as well as LinkedIn Learning. So you can build out a learning path and then have that delegation flow coming in as well. So that will be coming soon. So I do like the fact you can do these learning paths on top of the learning goals. So you can create collections. So as part of the collections, an employee can create their own learning collection themselves, or you can have sort of those unorganized kind of grouping collections, and to be able to help and support you. And you can then share those. So the individual person can share a collection of learning, so that you'll be able to also, even coming soon, be able to upload personal files or links to put into the learning collection. And then you can then have that, what is the learning path, the learning connection, all kind of coming together. So you can actually share those out. So I do like that. Now this is based on a subscription, Viva Insights, where you can kind of get yourself prepped. So if you've got to be somewhere in particular, or it says make sure you read these documents, so it's because it's got attachments to complete a particular task. So depending on what's actually stated, Viva will look through the content and then supply a suggestion to be able to accept some booking time, to be able to drop that into your calendar to block out components for Outlook to support you. So that comes as part of the Viva Insights subscription piece. In terms of what's new in Office, now this I've put in because I don't know if you've had a look previously, but in the Insider blog. So if you're on the Microsoft Insider, and as an individual, at home, you can actually join the Insider, Microsoft Insider. It's changed the name from Office Insider to Microsoft 365 Insider recently, by the way. So if you're going to the Office Insider, it has changed. But what you can do is you can see what us as, I suppose, beta channel testers are in and having a look at. And it goes through a lot of the stuff that we see on the what's new. It's already there and kind of being tested, and it points to some of this information in terms of the insider piece. So I thought you might like to have a look at it. Things like video filters in Teams meeting, transcribe coming into Word, Windows on the desktop. So the full version with transcribe. We could do it online through the app, online through a browser, but we couldn't do it on the desktop. So these are all features that are being tested. The format painter that we love as part of PowerPoint, and we can see that now coming into an iPad, for example, in testing. Creating neat lines and shapes and things like that in OneNote on Windows on the desktop, and magnifying our slides in PowerPoint and PowerPoint Live in Teams. So you want to kind of know what are they playing around and testing. It's always a good way to go and have a look. What's new in Outlook? There is what's coming soon, what's called bookable time, and this is in the online environment. So what you can do is, if you go up to the top and you're going, I want to do a new event, you've got, I want to have a look at the new bookable time in the drop down pane, and then they can actually book based on this particular time slot. There's a booking page which comes as all kind of part of bookings if you're using bookings. So you'll have the bookable time flowing out, and when you choose bookable time, it will then go, what is your availability, and give all the bookable time slots for them to be able to work with from your own personal bookings page. So that's sort of as part of bookings. You've also got, and this one, I really wish we had it for the desktop because I love this. Outlook on the web. You've got what's called your meeting recap. We're used to it being in chat, for example, for a meeting that we send out from our calendar inside Teams. So in chat, you've got your past history of everything in your meeting. So now this is available in Outlook on the web. You do have your meeting cap directly from your calendar, so you can see it directly in your calendar for past history of stuff, or you want to get yourself prepped and ready for a meeting and put in links and everything and chat. You can do all that now through your Outlook calendar online. So if you whatever you use, Edge or Safari or Chrome, so you've got all those pre stuff going on. Now, there are some limitations, such as that meeting recordings in terms of the, it's not going to appear in the recap. It's not going to show you if you're doing channel meetings because it's not sitting in your personal calendar. It's sitting in a team calendar. So you're not going to see it there. And meetings, so that's that Teams channel or your group calendars, okay? Or you're kicking off an ad hoc. That's that meet now type thing. So if you're doing a meet now ad hoc, you're not going to then sort of see it on those ad hoc type stuff because it sits in chat. You don't have a scheduled meeting. So it's about the scheduled meeting on your personal calendar. It doesn't include sort of the other environments. Another cool one is in terms of Outlook on the web, the updating of the location when it comes to composing the message. So what was going to happen, where it sits is actually changed. It used to be running across the bottom. You have to have a lot of these bars. It's now all running up the top. Okay, so it's moving its location up the top. So if you've got content and screenshots, you'll need to update where it's physically sitting. They were running across the bottom. They've moved on the compose. Coming into groups, there is a component there for the tech. So from the technical side, admins are actually able to allow an end user to do an upgrade of their distribution lists to turn them into a group. So this is that older distribution lists. They can push out. So you might see, for example, an email coming in from IT to go, we want you to go and upgrade. Do you want to upgrade it from a distribution list into a group? So it sends this email. It's coming out soon. So there is that possibility. If you've been waiting for that to happen, it then puts the onus on the end user to do that distribution list change. The what's new in Excel, I always like to give you a couple of things that I particularly liked. This one was formula suggestions when it comes to working. I just got to play, and then formula by example. I'll show you on the next screen. So let's just see if it'll come up for you. Replay, because I've played it. So there's formula suggestions. So when you do something, and it's always about repetitive, it's a bit like that autofill. So if you're going, I'm putting in this, then this, then, and you're repeating, it goes, hang on, and it fills the cell with a formula that it's kind of recognizing based on the behavior that you're doing, and it will drop it in for you. The fact that you got an auto complete formula happening, how cool is that? It's not just a fill. It's actually a formula suggestion, and it fills with the formula. And this is in that online for the web. That one I just talk about being able to then maybe go, I need that, copy and paste, or you've got it on your desktop. Go open it online and get it to do there, and it will auto pull down, of course, to your desktop. So, a way to be able to do it. And then a formula by example. I'm going to move forward. Let's have a look. So the other one here is the formula by example, or the preview. So as you go in, that this piece we often would have as a pop-up. Now what you can do is you can actually see the preview of the little tips to see, are you doing it correctly? And you can click around and it'll help you with some of those explanations. So that one is a real helpful one. Wiki retirement. Now, when Wiki first got plugged into Teams, the MVP community did a bit of an outcry and going, no, when they took away OneNote. We have been waiting for this to happen for a long time, and the community has often gone, just do the drop down in Teams and remove Wiki. Don't do it. Because you couldn't print them, you couldn't send them anywhere, and inside meetings things were expiring, and then you didn't have access to your notes, and it was hard to have them collated in one place. That is being retired. So starting from mid-February, you will have the opportunity. So they will give a message going, do you want to export the wiki content over into your OneNote book? And then after exporting, it will then be over in their OneNote. They can continue to access and edit the existing wikis, but they can't then create them. Okay, but that's actually being retired. And we're going to start seeing that exporting over. So I'm very thankful that that's actually happening. And we'll start to see that flowing into our Teams meetings, because it's like when you go to take notes, was always defaulting over to Wiki. So there are some changes there too in terms of OneNote coming into play. Retiring is there's the mobile support around iOS 14. So if someone does have an older iOS on their mobile phone, they are not going to be able to use Teams. So that will be a bit of a caveat around Teams meetings. They can't use it on an old iOS. And then the retirement of apps that are actually based on those old selected templates, poll, survey, checklist, quiz and training, the quiz and training, they're going to stop functioning from the 10th of March, should you use those in terms of the selected templates with the apps. So that's kind of covering off all of the what's new. Conscious we've got a couple of minutes left. I've managed to fit it into the hour and a half. We always go hard or go home. There are lots of upcoming, community events happening all around the globe. So, keep an eye out should you wish to join any of one of them. Some are going to cost, some are free, some are virtual, some are in person. So if you are traveling, always something to keep an eye out. So these are all also the global community type stuff. And all that, where do you find? Same thing I kind of put up. That occasionally I'll update the links for you. Don't forget to join the adoption newsletter. Follow them on Twitter as well, which is at Microsoft Adoption, if you want to keep up to date. In terms of Twitter, all our resources, links, things that you'll be able to find, things that I've dropped in I think will help you. Where do I find a lot of my latest information? Really, I spend a lot of time on Tech Community, and then I'll go around and start to have a look at some of the other links. The other user groups that are available for you, if you've got a particular area that you focus on, if you go in, this is our GitHub repository where we've got all our user groups and all of the links in there. There's way more than what's on here. These are the ones that I usually get asked about though. Okay. I have put in, this is all of the last 2 years of videos for the adoption user group. If you want to go back and revisit any previous content, you can just go. Probably easier if you just go subscribe to the YouTube channel, and it will just immediately tell you once that new content has been loaded up. So if you want to know when it gets loaded, if you subscribe, you'll get the notification. Okay. What's next? So next month, first Tuesday of the month is the 7th of March. I won't be kicking off at 12 next month. I'll be kicking off at 12:30 because I am going to be down in Adelaide. So I'll be running my session from Adelaide. I'll be in a room with my headset on, so it'll be a little different next month. So I've just adjusted the time a little, and so it will be running from 12:30, and it will go for 1 hour. So we'll try and squeeze it in. I may not be able to put all of the what's new in next month. We'll see. It depends on how busy a month it is, but and those challenges. But thanks very much, everyone, for coming along. If anyone has any questions on anything, please feel free to raise your hand. I'll just go back and double check if there's anything.
And I've just popped in a link to the Prosci AdCard model, the free ebook bundle.
Yep.
So you can click on there and you can get the free ebook from Prosci.
Very good. And if there aren't any questions for anyone, please feel free to come off mute or raise your hand. If not, I will call it a day until next month. Hopefully you've enjoyed the session, and thank you everyone for those that have actually stayed and engaged. It's been great to see you all, and welcome those that are new, and we hope you come back again. Have a fabulous week, everyone.
Thanks, and keep in contact.
Bye all.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
You're very welcome. Thank you, everyone.